Businesses like blacksmithing, they both share process. They both share the understanding that you are taking something that is raw materials, you're putting energy into it, you are transforming it into something ideally strong and long lasting. But there are stages to business and there are stages to blacksmithing. And often as you go through those stages, things can get a little confusing because the shape changes. And I wonder if you recognize any of these things in your situation. Because when you start a business, it can get really exciting. You get the fire rolling, you get momentum going, but it doesn't take long before the initial shape that you had changes into something new. And then when you get to around the middle of the business, you're not done, but there are things that you're done with. There's things that you no longer tolerate. There's things that you are refining. But the final shape is still not 100% clear. The thing that you're looking at right now still looks very different to the thing at the end. In fact, it can look so different, it looks more different to the end state than it did at the start. And then as you're getting close to the end, you're getting close to refining it just right. There are plenty of people out there who think blacksmithing is about these heavy hitting hammers. But I want to show you today, it's actually much more around refinement and the light touch. And when you get to that refining stage, it's about bringing that light touch. So you're actually creating something not just strong and long lasting, but something beautiful, something artistic that is really a design, your version of a successful design that gives you the lifestyle you want. All right? So it's about that finesse. Now, I'll show you the process today, but every process starts with one thing, which is to light the fire. Before anything else, the steel needs to heat. Cold steel doesn't want to move. Every blow is harder than it needs to be. You can force it, but you'll be fighting it the whole way. At the right temperature, everything changes. The metal loosens, it stretches, it bends, it takes shape without breaking. When you're burnt out or running on fumes, your mind does the same thing. And you want to make sure that you start with enough, because if you don't have enough material, you're not going to be able to create the size of the thing that you want. Now this bar has enough, right? It's got enough. If you're building your business, do you have enough time? Is there enough margin in your business model? Do you have enough clarity and support to do the things that you want to do? If you've got enough material and you heat it up right, it's going to be easier to take shape. Most people don't give themselves enough of what they need and they wonder why it doesn't actually take shape the way they pitch it. Now we start with direction. We start to create a few very intentional blows to form the point. Again, it's not about heavy hitting. There's going to be a time for that. When it gets a little cooler, we put it back in the fire. You know, a step like this can actually feel pretty simple, but if you rush it, you don't get the start right, it makes everything else much more difficult. So now we've got this nice taper on the end. That's the shape. We can move to step 2. Now, this next step is actually the part I love, where it looks like I'm ruining it. I'm setting down some intentional steps early on in the process so that it makes things easier for me later on. Using the anvil to do a lot of the work. These are not heavy blows, they're quite light. But at the end of it, it looks like we've ruined it. So it looks like we've made a major mistake here, but in actual fact, this is exactly how it's supposed to look. From here, we'll start to give it some shape, but every business has this stage. We have to do certain things that maybe make it look different than you hoped, but once you put them in, it's going to make the end much easier. Now we've taken the necessary steps to prepare it, we can actually put a bit of weight behind the work. In this case, we're going to be flattening it out, and it's going to be forming some of the shape. So now we've taken some heavier hits and the whole thing's starting to come along. Now that we've got the rough shape formed, we can actually start to put a little bit of weight behind the work. This is just one of the examples is where there's no point in putting effort behind something that you haven't quite got into the right position yet. You can really see it start to take shape now, and the thing I love about a gum leaf in particular is that no gum leaf is really the same as another, and just like every other business has its own personality, it's not about perfection, it's about finding what is the shape that it wants to become. And that's a large part of business, is actually working with the business, not forcing the business, but working with the business to actually allow it to become what it needs to become. And from here, we actually find our center line and finalize our shape. So we're clear about what we're trying to create now, and we can actually start to use some tools that make this whole process much more automated. Specifically designed tools to create a real center line through the work. We don't force it through, we just put that first line through first, because when we do that, we're creating an intentional pathway, and this is part of process creation. We don't systemize before we actually create process. So a process, we're very happy with the clean line. Now we actually deepen that line and systemize it into the business. This is the point where we really get to deepen the form, give it some real character. This is also the part where the shape really starts to come to life. Now we're getting close to the finishing line, and this is a delicate step. This is refinement. This is about understanding when we're working on this stem that if we don't do it just right, if we don't hit it at just the right angle, and if we go and hit the rest of the work, we could destroy it all. Light taps. Precise taps. Now what I like about this refinement step is there's all sorts of things that we can do here. They're all personal preference. Get to the end of your business, you get to actually choose what are the refining steps. So we've thinned it out, the stem is there. We could extend it, we could create a little loop, we could turn this into a keychain, we could do all sorts of different things. I'm going to finish it with a flat end, and I'm going to show you that the last step really is about cutting off any excess, any of the things that are not going to serve us moving forward, and then we'll have our finished leaf. So the final step is to bring something in that's going to allow us to cut off the excess. I bring my leaf in and I decide where I want to cut it, and I use a pre-made piece to help me do the work. Again, leverage. At the end of the day, we complete it like that. And so you can see there, this is the final work. And there's all sorts of ways that we can finish that off in the bottom. We can twist the leaf a little bit more, we can make it a little bit more artistic. Really the choice is up to us. Your preferences come into how you finish this thing. And for me, I just enjoy the process. I love bringing these things to life. So let me show you what it looks like when it's complete. So at the end of the day, what you get is something like this. This is a blacksmith's journal, a physical representation of every single stage of the process. And ideally, when you finish your business, you will know what each of the stages of that business development were. But it becomes hard at the very start to know what the end looks like, and it becomes very hard at the start to know what it should be looking like in the middle. And so having someone who can work along with you to show you what are the benchmarks, what are the stages that you need to get to so that you can get to what you want at the end is half the battle. At the end of the day, it's dirty work, it's sweaty work, but it's a lot of fun. And if you are someone who wants to build something for yourself, then maybe this is for you. My name's Russell Pearson. Stay passionate.